You all keep your Wednesday mornings free because we have some wonderful speakers this fall. My name is Barb Leese. Here are some things you need to know before we start. Please silence your cell phone. Turn on your T-coil if you have one. If there's time for questions, Heidi and I will come around with the mics. Please speak directly into the mic. If you're able, please put your chair up after the program. There's dollies in the front and the back. And now for the main event. I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce today's speaker. Dr. James R. Paulson recently retired as a family practitioner, having served our Grinnell community, including many of us in this room, for 42 years. In addition to his family practice, he served for more than 30 years as hospice medical director, and he also created the Grinnell Area Mental Health Consortium-JPK, which promotes access to mental health care for all. Dr. Paulson received his BA degree in philosophy and his master's degree in science and education from the University of Michigan. After teaching in elementary and high school for 4 years, he entered medical school and received his MD from Michigan State University. Today, in part one of his two-part lecture, Dr. Paulson will explain the dangers of BS and how to know it when we see it. Please join me in welcoming Dr. J.R. Paulson.
Oh, thank you all. Is the sound test in the back okay? Raise your paws. Good. Okay, well, I hope you had time to peruse this first slide because we're going to talk about all of that and more. Being a city slicker from Michigan, I had no exposure to cattle or cows. When I came to Iowa and visited a farm, I saw a cow or a bull rather, up close for the first time. I always wondered where BS came from, and the farmers said. However, they said, don't get too close and watch where you walk. You don't have rubber boots on. Well, sure enough, I looked down, and boy, what did I see? Ugh, gross. Boy, is that stinky. And look at all the flies that it attracts. And I said, boy, that stuff must really pile up over time. What do you do when it piles up? What do you do with it? Don't go away. Okay, continuing, what do you do with this big pile of BS? Well, I knew about dung beetles, and I thought, well, maybe the dung beetles clear it up. But I was told by the farmers, no, we take advantage of this stuff. We do this. We shoot it around as manure. Well, what happens if you just leave it in the field for a long time? Are there any other uses for it? When it dries out and becomes hard and less stinky, you can toss it, chuck it. And I didn't realize, but there's a world championship for cow chip tossing. And those of you that may feel more mature or challenged, there's no age limit or ability to compete. I also know that there's been increased sports betting in Iowa, and I was informed that, gee, there's now cow pie betting. I asked the farmers, I said, well, is there any big difference between bullshit and cow shit? And I was told no. I think, okay, so that's interesting. So no difference between cow shit, and I was asked about sex differentiation. Well, then in my history studies, I learned that in cities that sometimes horse shit was a big problem in the big cities. This is New York City, 1893. And guess where all that stuff is piled on up by the sidewalks there the ladies are walking by. New York City was a crowded mess. New York had over 100,000 horses producing 2.5 million pounds of manure every day. Can you imagine that? Every day. Fossil fuel, powertrains, electric streetcars, internal combustion vehicles were seen as the clean energy alternative. So, I came up on the idea for this class, BS, how to recognize it and avoid stepping in it. And so I decided to come up with a class, how to recognize it, avoid stepping in it, and I added this a week ago, which I think many of you want to know, and how to deal with those who have stepped in it. I think that's going to be worth the price of admission. Anybody recognize who this guy is? NBA basketball star, Kyrie Irving. And before an all-star game, he gave this comment. This is not even a conspiracy theory. The earth is flat. Then later, months later, he had to come on TV and on the social media and say, I'm sorry about it because I'm really goofing up all you science teachers. You're going to have to change everything the way you teach science. And I apologize to all of you folks about the way you're going to have to teach science. And to go along here also, a couple things he said later was, he since learned certain thoughts are best kept in intimate conversation. He shouldn't be telling you that he's thinking about this. But I thought this was interesting. This is back in 2017, shortly before the All-Star weekend. It came a story, the commissioner says, well, who like Irving went to Duke, was asked his opinion. And he said, well, Kyrie and I went to the same college, but he may have taken some different courses. How about you? But Duke's a pretty good university, and taking different courses doesn't cut it. Well, if he would have gone to college and he would have taken some history, he would have heard about Aristophanes, who was a Greek polymath, a mathematician, geographer, poet. He was a man of learning, and he was a librarian in Alexandria, Virginia. He lived in the 2nd century BC. Oh, Alexandria, maybe Egypt. Getting ahead of my time. Well, he had this theory that the earth was round, and so he came up with a very clever experiment. He planted a stick in the ground at Alexandria, and on the summer solstice, he noticed that it cast a shadow. The sun wasn't directly overhead. There was a little shadow. However, he noticed that farther south, about 5,000 stadia, miles south, which is now Aswan, that there was no shadow. Well, it was easy math and geometry to follow to calculate that the earth is round and, the diameter must be about that, 40,000 kilometers. Circumference to go around. Today's estimate is this. So, it was pretty darn close with his 2 sticks. If he studied at Duke, he probably heard of this guy, Magellan. Maybe not. You know, he didn't take the same classes. Maybe he was a math major. I don't know. He should have found out that, yeah, somebody actually went around the world, even though Magellan died in the Philippines, but the voyage continued. He probably should be aware of the International Space Station and picture that the Earth is round. Or pictures from the moon. You see our footprints on there looking back at the Earth. Now, one of his friends, another or NBA, Shaquille O'Neal, said, he's interested in investigating the flat Earth theory too. He says, I like to be open. And he says, I kind of use common sense. He says, the reason is, when I flew from here to Australia, if the Earth was round, the farther I got, I'd be tipping more. By the time I got to Australia, I'd be like this. Okay, Shaq. He said, listen, there are 3 ways to manipulate the mind. What you read, what you see, and what you hear. True, and this class is going to be about that. Professional football player J.J. Watt said our lockers have been next to each other. This is another person, of course, for over a year, and I just found out that his locker mate doesn't believe in dinosaurs. Says the fossils are fake. Oh, 9/11 was an inside job. The Obama conspiracy-o-rama. So there are dozens and dozens of conspiracies about Obama. You just pick your circle there. He's a Kenyan. He's not one of us. He's a sham. He's a weirdo. He's a Muslim. He's a terrorist. Pick whatever you want. So people's beliefs. How many people believe in the theory of evolution? 45%. Ghosts, creationism, UFOs, astrology, witches, reincarnation. Percent who agree or unsure or disagree with 3 conspiracy claims and with a basic scientific fact. So I like the first one, which those of us in the medical profession have dealt with a lot. Vaccinations, implant computer chips. That's why they don't, 9% agree, 19% are unsure. The earth is flat. 10% of people still believe that. 9 are unsure. Did NASA land on the moon? Oh, there's 27% are agree or don't really think we went to the moon. But Earth being old, I guess people buy that yeah, the Earth is old. Now, another just way to present some of the data. Vaccinations implant microchips. The Earth is flat. And you can see conspiracy theories at the top and science postulates down further. Now, is there any relation to your political view and your belief in conspiracy theory? Again, I'm just showing you data. And actually there is, whether you approve or disapprove of ex-President Trump. And you find that if you believe in the conspiracy theory of vaccinations, you also have been a supporter of Trump. Likewise, the earth is flat, more likely Trump supporter. Likewise, NASA did not land on the moon, more likely Trump supporter. But when it comes to the age of the earth, any political persuasion doesn't make much difference. I find this interesting and could spend a lot of time on this. 4 conspiracies by generation. And I'll just hit a highlight here. Let's look at the. So what that slide shows, I can talk a little bit about that, is on the moon conspiracy that if you're early or late baby boomer, we believe we went to the moon and landed on it. Why? Because those of us in this room, we saw it on TV in '69. And as the generations go further on, less and less believe. So Gen Z, almost 50% don't believe that we really went to the moon or aren't sure. Think about that. So I conclude that conspiracy theory is going nuts, but I don't think we're doing a very good job in education in our schools if we're raising generations that come up that have no clue of the veracity of pretty obvious scientific facts. Cool. Do you want me to come over there? We will try this, folks. All right. Let's see if this works. Don't go away. Okay, so do you see what I'm talking about up there? I think you could. And again, this is online, so some of you can go home and watch it at your leisure. For some time, I had suspected Reginald of wrongdoing. Now I believe my life to be in danger. So even cats have conspiracy theory. In one of my earlier classes, I have some famous quotes, and this is one I like to espouse a lot. Thank you. Oscar Wilde, admonishes, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. and repeat that to yourself 10 times. 10 years ago, 13, I did 3 bucket classes, Finding the Truth, and why do we believe? So 10 years ago, if you want to go back and get more detail about finding what is the truth, it's on the bucket course website. We also back then used the truthometer to find out what is the truth. Now, if I show you this picture and say, well, what do you think about that? And you go, well, that's kind of interesting, that gal there. But, oh, what does she say on her bottom? Gee, there's a dog driving that car. Gee, I guess I missed that. Whoever said the moon is green cheese? Well, seeing is believing. This is from my observatory, with my telescope. That's a picture I took of the moon. And look at it, folks. It's green. So don't let anybody tell you it's not green cheese. This experiment was done, and I've mentioned it before. What there are 6 people there, and they're passing basketball back and forth. Some of them have white shirts, some of them have black shirts. And they pass and they move around, and this goes on for about 3 minutes, and you're to count, the participants, of how many times a white shirt person passes to another white shirt person. But in the middle of that, somebody walks in the middle of it with a gorilla costume on. Well, of 100,000 people who did this test, less than half saw the gorilla. Think about that. What's going on? So what your mind is tuned in to do is pretty important. For those of us in medicine, can you spot the gorilla in the CT scan? So there's a gorilla in the CT scan, and if I point it out to you, it's here. If you need a thing, there's a little gorilla up there, and he's there. And most people looking at the CAT scan, we're told to look for tumors, don't see it. But what's interesting is 83 of radiologists missed it. And they even had monitors on their eyeballs to see that they looked at that spot. And they did not see the gorilla. Our mind is not a video recorder. Experiments and other examples in the first class taught us to be very wary of hubris in our powers of perception. We are all influenced by our beliefs and expectations. Remember my example of optical illusions that I did in the class. Wine and peach tasting. Wine was judged better to be out of a fancier bottle, and peaches taste better out of a jar rather than a can. We also grossly misunderstand how the brain works. Our eyes are not simple video cameras, nor are our memories simple cassette tapes to be put in and out and replayed with authenticity to the reality that we experienced. This is an extremely important point to remember in thinking about our thinking. So, moving from cows to the vernacular. What is BS? So, bullshit, a vulgar slang, stupid or untrue talk or writing, nonsense. A verb, you can bullshit people. Be deceptive. Other definitions, deceitful, boastful language, something worthless, deceptive and insincere. Now, when I grew up in the 40s and 50s, the use of bullshit, I didn't hear it much. My mother was a Victorian woman, and she never ever said that word. It was swearing slang. My dad was a principal and administrator and coach. I never had heard him say the word. But notice over time, the use of the word bullshit in our vernacular has gone up significantly. So I'm going to use BS as a short term so I don't offend any of you. Is ubiquitous. We all are exposed to BS almost all of the time. We all use it at different times and to different degrees. We all think that we're innate and good BS detectors, and I'm going to try to show you otherwise. If it seems like there's more around lately, you're right. Are there different degrees of BS? Of course, yes. Some's innocent. Some's moderately bad. Some's extremely harmful and dangerous. This is a definition. If you want to have it, write it down or remember it, look it up later. So what's the definition of bullshit? The degree to which something qualifies as bullshit is inversely proportional to the degree to which the claim is based on truth, genuine evidence, and or established knowledge. I love that. John Petrocelli. And one of the books that I used was The Life-Changing Science of Bullshit Detecting. And he's a social scientist who's done research in the area. Another little book I have over here, one of the first tomes that I actually found is by Harry Frankfurt. It's a little 40-page book about BS, so I had to go get this to be prepared for the class. He is a moral philosopher at Princeton University. Now, Petrocelli says, let's have a BS index. And I like this graph, so we'll use this throughout the class. Is it harmless? Is it bad, harmfully, potential, or is it dangerous? And we're going to put flies on the BS. Is it a 1-fly BS, a 2-fly BS, or a 3-fly? And we all know, you farmers know what the 3 BS looks like. We all BS. Here's some guys just standing around in a bar talking. Okay, maybe it only weighed 200 pounds. The Pinocchio effect. And yeah, we all say, yeah, it's about that big, but his son's behind him. I assume that's his son saying, this is the fish Dad really caught. Now, of course, we can get pictures of the real fish that Dad caught. Yeah, wow, those are impressive. But nowadays, you can Photoshop those in, can't you? Guys, we love to BS, particularly as athletes. I can tell you about my great tennis shots yesterday. Judy Hunter wasn't there to disclaim this. And going back to high school, I can really tell you some great athletic stories and feats, stories that I did. Girls, do you BS? Well, maybe, but we're nicer to you, and we call it gossip. So, what's the definition of gossip? Casual and unconstrained conversation reports about other people, typically involving details that are not confirmed as true. So BS counts as, or gossip counts as BS in our assessment. So 2 quotes on gossip that I think are very germane. Eleanor Roosevelt, great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. So the next time you're in a group of hand clutch, think about that. And one of my favorite people, Stephen Covey, never say anything about anyone in their absence that you wouldn't say in their presence. I can't emphasize that enough. That is so. People start talking when I'm around. I go, well, would you say that if they were standing here? Well, no, I wouldn't. Well, if you wouldn't say it with them standing there, don't say it. Trump, God, and the weather. The rain should have scared them away. But God looked down and he said, we're not going to let it rain on your speech. In fact, when I first started, I said, oh no, first line. I got hit by a couple drops. And I said, oh, this is too bad, but we'll go right through it. But the truth is that it stopped immediately. It was amazing. And then it became really sunny, and then I walked off, and it poured right after I left. In reality, the rain did not stop, leading former President Bush to don a plastic poncho. The sun remained behind the clouds following Mr. Trump's speech. Trump and inauguration crowd size. Honestly, that's my italics. It looked like 1.5 million people. Whatever it was, it was. Then it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. In terms of total attendance, including television and everything else that you had we supposedly the biggest crowd in history. They say, another one of his famous sayings, I had the biggest crowd in the history of inaugural speeches. Here's an aerial view of the two crowds. Obama's on the right and Trump's on the left. Facts on crowd size. White House counselor Kellyanne Conway claimed that alternative facts were employed by Press Secretary Sean Spicer when he tried to make that case. I wanted to say that. Alternative facts. I didn't know there was such a thing. So where will we put this on our BS meter? I put a star. I think it's low. This didn't do any harm. His crowd size, God changed the weather for him. Okay, great. However, BS can be harmful in many ways. What we believe does matter as it shapes our attitudes, beliefs, and eventually the decisions we make. It can be financial, political, social, and moral, and lead to different behaviors. Some of these can be detrimental to both ourselves and to others. They can affect what we buy, for whom we vote, who we like, who we hate, what we eat, and even our health and longevity. In addition, we can either knowingly or unknowingly propagate it. With social media, it can spread with almost lightning speed, literally around the world, as there are no guardrails for its truthfulness. Fake news. Anybody ever heard of fake news? No. What is fake news? No facts, propaganda, clickbait, misinformation. Now, I don't know about you. Everybody in here know what clickbait is? A couple people do. I didn't. I had to look it up. So clickbait typically refers to the practice of writing sensationalized or misleading headlines in order to attract clicks on a piece of content. It often relies on exaggerated claims or leaving out key information in order to encourage traffic. The term is generally used in a dismissive sense. So what are some examples of clickbait? You will get these on your phones, I guarantee, your computers. Leading doctor reveals #1 worst carb. Money. Banks don't want you to know. Cute pet things. They know you're going to click on these things, right? They just know. And then that takes you to more and more and more. So what about the growth of fake news? 2016 is when the first term started being used. Notice how it's gone up. News coverage volume versus growth in disinformation from 2016 on to 2020. Notice the news coverage volume going up, and after 2016, it just accelerated. Now, fake news has been going on history for a long time. 13th century BC, I think, started with the first fake news. It's been going on ever since. Sensationalism always sold well. By the early 19th century, modern newspapers came on the scene, touting scoops and exposés, but also fake stories to increase circulation. The New York Sun's great moon hoax of 1835 claimed there was an alien civilization on the moon and established the Sun as a leading profitable newspaper. So this didn't just start recently, folks. Isn't that neat? All the cool stuff that's going on the moon. I guess I missed this one, though. You know, on the news, I didn't realize the UFO didn't land in Roswell. It landed in Arkansas. Geez, how many of you knew this? And Secret Service is building a special nursery in the White House. Wow, I'm impressed. Facebook engagements for top 20 election stories. This is very scary and disturbing to me. So mainstream news, you can see what's happening to that going down and fake news going up. And you see that they passed one another. So more fake news stories about election than that. So I'm going to finish fake news and we'll take a break, which is a little later. Fake news is created to deceive. It's generally well written and with one of two goals in mind, to mislead or hurt an opposing side. Not only can it be extremely damaging on the one hand, but hugely beneficial on the other. now viewed as dangerous trend, which is spiraling out of control. The general public finds increasingly difficult to pinpoint what is real or fake news, what is fact or fiction, and what is truth or lies. This is affecting the validity of all stories, making it hard for any actual news to be taken seriously. Now, it's not just a problem in the United States. Take a look at the trust in local news in different countries around the world. And notice we're down there pretty low, not as low as Greece, but compared to Canada, Japan. And I want to highlight Brazil, up there at 60%. People in Brazil kind of believe their local news. However, some of you know Brazilian voters were bombarded with misinformation days before the vote. Rio de Janeiro. They were bombarded by online misinformation. People on social media say wrongly that the leftist candidate plans to close down churches if elected. There are lies that De Silva wants to let men use public school restrooms next to little girls. And they're falsely alleging that right-wing President Bolsonaro has made comments confessing to cannibalism and pedophilia. So this is what these people are getting bombarded on both sides. Unfortunately, Bolsonaro. Now, this side should also be, I think, troubling to you and me. The majority of people are confident in their ability to recognize fake news. 39% are very confident that you can say, oh yeah, I can separate the wheat from the chaff. And 45% are somewhat confident. And only 15%, I'm not so sure. That's what this class is about, folks. John Adams said, facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. So, BS can be in the form of fake news, and it can be very harmful. So I'm going to do one more little segment here, and then we're going to have our break. No, I think we'll stop right there and take our break. Yes?
We'll shorten our break by a couple of minutes, so try to make up a little bit of time. So listen for the bell.
Now, how many of you are familiar, raise your hand, with Mao Zedong and his war on sparrows? Raise your hand. Okay, just a few. Sparrows were targeted because Mao believed that they ate grain. He said about 4 pounds a year, depriving people of the fruit of their work. Thus, alongside rats, mosquitoes, and flies, they found their way onto the list of the 4 plagues that the great helmsman swore to eradicate. Everyone killed them, even children a few years old. So this is a poster in 1958, hygiene campaign. And I put a star by this because a law was even passed in China. It was quickly passed in 59, requiring citizens to participate in targeting sparrows. And posters were up, you were a good patriot if you killed sparrows. So kids could string them all up and be proud. However, Mao did not know or think or couldn't be talked out of this, that sparrows also eat insects, and they eat locusts. So within the next 2 years, what happened? The locust went wild, causing a great famine, the Great Famine in China. And under his rule in the next couple years, 15 to 55 million Chinese died because of this. And that's 6 times more than the Holocaust. So most of us do not know about this. So it did not go well for the Chinese people to believe this doctrine. So they had to actually go to Russia and import 250,000 sparrows to start repopulating the sparrow population. So I put that as dangerous, and in the three fly category. Trump attempts to claim election victory. And I don't do social media, but I assume this is a tweet. Somebody help me out here. What is on? And Trump says he only won in the eyes of the fake news. Now the fake news is, of course, the real news. I concede nothing. We have a long way to go. This was a rigged election. Trump's suggestion to treat COVID-19. I see this infection where it knocks it out in a minute. And of course, the health department had to come out with these warnings right after that saying, don't drink or inject disinfectant, folks. I don't care if the President of the United States suggested it. Of course, many people did, and many people died. What about the no vaccine? There's a continuum of vaccine acceptance. At one end, refuse all vaccines, and at the other, accept all, and everything in between. What are some facts? Well, unvaccinated individuals are about 5 times more likely to get COVID, but 31 times more likely to die if you do get COVID. So these are not little borderline numbers here, folks. That's pretty significant. So those of us in the medical profession, of course, had to come up with how to dispel vaccine myths. And so here's one from the Franciscan Health. And there are 10 myths that people have, like computer chips are put in. Susie, did we put computer chips in people, or Patty Hendricks when we gave them the shots? I can trust you on that. That's not BS. But people still believe that, and they give reasons. So, but just putting this pamphlet out and didn't change much. And as this class goes on, you're going to find out why it doesn't. So let's dive deeper into what we mean by BS. We all like there to be a nice line of distinction between the truth and lies. Yep, that's true. Nope, that's false. However, as I've already alluded to, the truth is rarely pure and usually never simple. We've all been shaped by our Cartesian dualism of Western philosophy and history to divide things into two nice and neat categories. It's a lot easier to deal with than trying to blur borders or use an Eastern yin-yang model. So my model is this: the truth and lies. They don't overlap, of course. In between is BS, but notice some things from my model. First, there's an overlap between BS, the truth, and lying. So BS can be both the truth and lying. Second, besides the truth having a large and varied domain, lying does too. So lying isn't just a simple circle. Third, I will show there are two aspects of BS that need to be analyzed: both what is said and the motivation of the BSer. Fourthly, there's an area of BS that seems to fit in between the truth and frank lying. We all BS and we all lie. Not buying that, you're not being honest. Oh. Gee, used car salesman. BS isn't necessarily lying. I just showed you in my diagram. It used to belong to a little old lady who only drove it on Sundays. Now, if he was talking about my mother's Caprice car, that was 100% true. 100% true. That car was only driven to Bridge Club and to on Sundays. So what's important here? Both the facts and the motivation of the salesman. Is he bullshitting you or just plain lying to you? What's important is making a distinction of what the used car dealer really knows and his degree in concern about it. If the dealer really knew the truth but communicated something different to you, then he lied. If he didn't care about the truth or know about it, he's just bullshitting you. So, how do we separate that out? Well, yeah, you can go to Carfax. Gee, No accidents reported. No other damage reported. Only two owners. They've got service records. Oh, I don't know, maybe it was really owned by a little old lady. So, the distinction between a bullshitter and a liar is motivation. BSers and liars may say the very same things. So it's not quite as simple as we thought. Likewise, it's possible for the BSer to be telling the truth as he's not been paying any attention to what he's saying. They both appear to deceive as they both appear to be concerned with the truth. Sometimes the BSer even believes his own BS. Likewise, the liar can sometimes be actually telling the truth. Abe Lincoln example. So what's the example of that? How come a liar? So pretend you're a Confederate soldier in an outpost, end of the Civil War, Union's holding you, and you want to make your Union captors, get them really upset. So it's 7 days after the Civil War ended, but you're out in the boondocks. And you tell them, Abraham Lincoln has been killed, because that's really going to upset them. Abraham Lincoln has been killed. You don't know that because you're way out in the boondocks. Lincoln was assassinated 6 days after the Civil War was over. So you see, he's trying to make a lie and really believes it. He knows he's lying but he was, in fact, what he said was true. Lincoln was dead. It took slow communication back then. A bit more about lying. Just as the truth is not simple and clear, what we mean by lying is also muddier than we think. We all lie, and probably a lot. We lie to others, but especially to ourselves. Are there different degrees of lying? Ever heard of the term a little white lie? Immanuel Kant, philosopher, implored us never to lie. But St. Augustine went into this in more detail and said there are 7 types of lies, with one being the most egregious. So St. Augustine put them out in order, and look at the different distinctions. And the most egregious was the one at the top. Lies told in teaching religion or heresy. That is going to get you in trouble. But then there are lies that hurt some people, but down there are lies that hurt nobody and benefit somebody. So you're telling a lie that's actually helping somebody. Well, that's not quite as bad as some of the other ones. Lies which hurt nobody and protect a person from physical defilement. Somebody's coming and asking you where, like it's happening in Israel, where is your family? Oh, they're hiding back in the closet. No, they're not here. You're going to lie to protect them. Is that a bad lie? I don't think so. What about this one? Truth detector confirms the businessman's story. UFO aliens abducted me and stole my blood. He showed you the spot on the arm where they stole his blood. So, what do you think about that, all you BS detectors here? Well, is this person really a good bullshitter who just really thinks he was abducted by aliens? Maybe he dreamed it, and it seemed so real, and he had a bite in his arm at night, right, from a large blood-sucking insect. So he's got proof that, yeah, this dream really happened. Is he a frank liar who's trying to make some bucks from the National Enquirer? Is he actually a psychotic who really experienced this delusion? Or does he have dementia? Or is he taking psychedelics? Well, in the past, old-fashioned lie detectors were fair. I don't know what time they got admissible in court. More modern lie detectors, of course, have galvanic skin responses on your fingers and your heartbeat and stuff. But if we want really good and find out, are you lying or telling the truth, we go to functional MRI, folks. That's pretty tough to beat. It's because different parts of your brain light up if you're lying or telling the truth. So you think, gotcha. Well, do we all have the same brains? No. What if you're a pathologic liar? What if you're a psychopath? Gee, psychopaths actually have different brains than other people. So they may slide through the lie detector test because they don't have the same brains as a lot of other people. But I got great news for all of you today. You can get a real truth detector that you can use on people, and you can get it on Amazon for 24 bucks. And I'll give you the address at the next lecture. So that's how you can nail this. So what are the consequences of lying? Most people have a strong reaction and indignation after finding out that they've been lied to. If they're lied to repeatedly, it destroys trust in that person or institution. Besides social, there are many serious legal repercussions. However, in today's world, many think that the truth doesn't matter and they can lie with impunity. They often claim free speech. Fortunately, the pendulum seems to be swinging back with negative consequences for many. Sandy Hook. Oh. Guess they caught up with Alex Jones. Rupert Murdoch. Fox stars endorsed the lies about the 2020 election, but he chose not to stop them because it was getting good press. It was getting good followers. Off the air, Fox News stars blasted the election fraud claims they peddled. So they all told you, nah, we didn't really believe this. They didn't say BS. But when they come on the news, oh, election rigged. Gee, mugshots of Donald Trump and his alleged co-conspirators in Georgia election. Oh, gee, peddling BS. It's going to catch up with them? Yep. How about rioters following BS? On to the Capitol, let's do this. Well, 1,000 people already been charged in the Capitol riot, and many of them, of course, as we know, in jail or prison. So what are the consequences of BS? Psychological effects, impaired memory, financial loss, broken relationships, negative health consequences, lack of respect or trust in the person peddling BS, bad political outcomes, legal consequences. They can range from innocent to horrific. So let's take a look at innocent. So this is a typical BS session that we're having. Maybe it's a bunch of us guys after playing tennis and girls talking about the tennis game or talking about or anything, or women that are hopefully not gossiping about other people. But what goes on in a bull session is the participants try out various thoughts and attitude and just to see how it feels, hear themselves, and see what other people do. But there's an unwritten recognition that what he or she expresses is not really be understood as what they mean wholeheartedly or what we believe unequivocally to be the truth. We just kind of try and floating some stuff out and see what the balloons show. You know, like, what do you think about some of these things in the city council that we've ordered? Where do you think about this? But you're not trying to nail stuff. You're just kind of floating stuff out there. Okay, pretty benign BS session. And then at the other extreme, Nazi Germany. And particularly in medicine. And particularly eugenics. Remember, the purity of the race, these people are polluting the human German population. They're inferior people. We need to sterilize them, right? And it could be gays, it can be Jews, it can be whatever, of course, led to killing them. But most of people are not aware that their sterilization was modeled after laws in the United States, folks. We have these laws on the books in Indiana and California. Sterilized over 60,000 people here with under the same BS belief. And Hitler said, let's use that. Propaganda. Definition, information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political view or point of view. When I was a kid growing up, I thought Yeah. Propaganda. Russia, Stalin. Those people use propaganda. The enemy uses propaganda. Well, as we all know, things went on, and gee, the Pentagon Papers, the secret war effort. Gee, the United States had expanded its war with the bombing of Cambodia and Laos, coastal raids in North Vietnam, and Marine Corps attacks, none of which had been reported in the American media. And then, further in the leak, it said, another example, a memo from the Defense Department under the Johnson administration listed the reasons why we were still in Vietnam. 70%, to avoid humiliating defeat. To keep South Vietnam and adjacent territory from Chinese hands. Oh, the domino effect? Nah, only 20%. Yeah, we don't really believe it. But that's not what they were peddling to the public. To help the people of South Vietnam. No, that's not really why we're there. What about Iraq? Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction. And Bush says, no, we got these weapons of mass destruction. We need to go in there and take over that country. How well did that go for us? And gee, guess what? They find no WMDs found in Iraq. This is a nice cartoon from Australia, National Museum of Australia, The Case for War. And as you can see, fiction, Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, fantasy. It's not all about oil. So other people in the world are kind of looking at this and going with a skewed eye. To be politically fair, gee, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Well, how did that go for you, Bill? Not too well. Now, he wasn't formally impeached. He was acquitted, but he was charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. So it falls on both sides of the political aisle. Anybody recognize this guy? Anybody? Bernie Madoff. Yeah. So what about Bernie Madoff? Oh, gee, he's some guy, a financier, and he ended up going to jail, didn't he? Yeah, because he ran the greatest Ponzi scheme in history. And a Ponzi scheme is a scheme that involves paying existing investors in a non-existent enterprise with the funds collected from new investors. So you see you got all these people here that are investing money, and you're giving it to these guys, but if these guys say, hey, give me some of that money back, nope, they've already passed it up the line. Now, this went on for 17 years, and here's this one picture, one graph that I want to draw your attention to. So you have the average stock market, what the stock market's doing. As you know, it goes up and down, right? But this is Madoff's investments. Now, wait a minute. I don't know about you. I'm not an economist. We have a professional economist here in the crowd. But I'm just looking at that, and I go like, yeah, that doesn't look right. Okay? Well, who would not want to continue to make 12% interest every year? So if you're making 12% interest every year, wherever the stock market does, why would you even consider changing or getting out? Well, Madoff was caught, of course, with this Ponzi scheme, with getting people out of billions of dollars, was sentenced to 150 years in prison, and forced to forfeit $170 billion, which, of course, he didn't have. And now, Madoff, he was some sleazeball. No, he was chairman of the NASDAQ in the early 90s. He was a well-respected Wall Street person, but he was able to dupe all these people. Do we all aware of the foreclosure, the housing bubble collapse? Or how about recently, cryptocurrency crash? Gee, 600 billion in market capitalization has been wiped out. And Sam may be going back to jail for this. So As you can see, BS can have significant financial consequences. What about us little folks? Can we be hurt even though we're not big investors in the stock exchange? Yeah. You've all heard these stories on the news. Elderly man scammed out of life savings, loses $2 million to a woman he met online. So what are scams? There's a whole bunch of them. As you all know, they're out there. Everything. Fake shopping websites, catfishing goes down. And I like this slide because they talk about the deadly sins and then they talk about the different scams. ARP is pretty good. So those of us and you members of ARP, they have good things that you can find on how to protect yourself from scams. Why are they never going to go away? Because what this man said, P.T. Barnum is a sucker born every minute. But this person says, but his estimate was laughably low. And I always heard and remembered, again, I don't know whether it's BS, but I always thought the quote said, there's a sucker born every minute and 2 to take him. You ever hear that? Well, that's where I connect that when the second one just follows. Sucker born every minute and 2 to take him. And I don't know who said that. I tried to research that. I couldn't find out who said that. Now, it can have a devastating effect on our memories, attitudes, beliefs, and decisions. One of the greatest of these due to the fact that the time and effort required to undo or correct is exponentially greater, exponentially I said, than the effort and time needed to produce it. In studies, participants were more likely to believe a false statement even if it had been shown just once prior. And they were even actually knowledgeable in the content of the statements. This is called illusory truth effect, the tendency to believe false information is correct after repeated exposure. Once implanted in memory, it becomes very difficult to remove. I love this slide. So, truth is a lie repeated with frequency and consistency. Another famous person, Napoleon, I thought it was Bonaparte, but Napoleon Hill, who was an early 20th century entrepreneur and con man, said any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. Hitler, only constant repetition will finally succeed in imprinting an idea on the memory of the crowd. How did he BS the huge population of Germany that he is? This is one of the ways he did it. Very interesting historical character who I've read a lot about and impressed by. 2 quotes by Bonaparte. Does it sound like any people we know? Wait a minute, they didn't invent that. Napoleon said that. And I love Napoleon's other famous quote. Gee, I told you, he was a smart guy. Where's the birth certificate? Gee, we've all been down seen that. Birth certificate, prove it. He's the president or is it jihad? So, here's Obama's birth certificate. Gee, he was born in Honolulu. Oh yeah. Aha, wait a minute. Trump, tweet. An extremely credible, quote, source has called my office and told me that Barack Obama's birth certificate is a fraud. That's not really his birth certificate. But because so-and-so said it, how long does that keep going? Well, Trump admits Obama was born in the U.S., but falsely blames Clinton for starting the rumor. And this was September 16, 5 years later. So he starts this bogus BS conspiracy. 5 years later, he says, yeah, I guess he really was born in the United States. But Clinton started the thing. How many people still believe the birther stuff? Tons. See the harmful effect this has? BS is very sticky. Once you get it on or in you, it's often very, very hard to get it off. For a long time, cognitive psychologists believe that people determine the truth or falsity of a statement, such as, the Atlantic Ocean is the largest ocean on Earth. And you go, oh, wait a minute, Atlantic Ocean, that's the Pacific. By relying on their memory. Instead, psychologists have found that the ease with which one recalls a fact determines how true something feels. Isn't that interesting? So it's how easy it is to retrieve is how it feels. But in addition, is that our level of knowledge does not protect us from developing the illusion of truth. In other studies, it was found that BS resulted in a more pronounced sleeper effect that did frank lies. The sleeper effect is a delayed impact of a persuasion on a person's attitude towards something. For example, if I tell you you're given a positive information about a restaurant in Des Moines, and later you found out something bad about it. But if I wait 2 weeks later, your positive feeling returns. That's psychology, human nature. That's not me. I don't fall for that. We all want to believe that we know things we don't. We want to believe we made the right decisions. The car we bought, the person we married, the career we chose to pursue, the college we attended or didn't, and the political candidate we voted for. We all like to delude ourselves into believing what we wish to be true, and of course, this allows our own BS to flourish. Because we are all human, we are all subject to many psychological forces that cause us to be bullable. The remaining part of the class, I'm going to focus on what makes us bullable and why others spread it. So what do psychological and cognitive studies show us? Oh, it's personality type. Some people are just trusting, you could sell them anything and bullable than others. Wrong. When you test that out, we're all susceptible. It involves a failure to detect BS cues or act on those cues appropriately. In the second class, I'm going to go into more detail. The context of something makes a huge difference. Example, Zimbardo's mock prison study in 1971 in Stanford, where he had Stanford students work in a mock prison, and they were the prison guards. And within a few days, they had to stop the experiment. They became so horrible to and abused them so much that they just had to stop the experiment. Wait, these were just normal college students. So the context of them being in power and authority and could do whatever they want dramatically changed what they showed. Xerox line and handouts in big cities. You're in line, big long line is usually the old Xerox machine, that's how old this is. And somebody comes, wait, I got a paper. No, they just said, can I get in here? I got 5 pages I want to do. Will you let me in? Or you're down in the streets in the city and somebody comes up and says, hey brother, can you give me $5? Okay. Now, you change the context. You add the word because in there, and they find out that, oh, people, because I have this class next week, or because blah, 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 my dog died, blah, 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 or I need money because people let people in line. They change. Just adding that one word. When you go to a restaurant, are you going to order Chilean sea bass or Antarctic toothfish? Ooh, which sounds, they're the same thing, folks. Same species. Influence and persuasion always work best in the context of uncertainty, because uncertain people are always looking for clarity and answers. Those who can't accept uncertainty usually don't know enough to detect BS. Cognitive biases. We all have and fall victim to many cognitive biases, or ways that our thinking can go awry. There are too many to review here, so I'll only mention a few. Or refer you again to 2 of my previous bucket classes, Finding the Truth and Why We Believe. There I review in detail the many cognitive booby traps that we can all get caught in. This is very important. Confusing argument with evidence. Argument is a reason for a claim. Arguments help us understand how or why something occurred. They don't verify or demonstrate that something occurs. Evidence. is the available body of information, in fact, supporting a belief or proposition as true or valid. Evidence is looking for proof, confirmation, and verification. It requires making observations in a systemic way using observable, objectively measured variables. Gee, sound like the scientific method? Duh. Example, it rained because I washed my car. Okay, it's an argument. Where's the evidence, Paulson? Airplanes can fly. Well, let's get a little fly. What does that mean? How far off the ground? I went to Maharishi University one time and we're meditating and they were trying to levitate in the big dome. Well, how high off the ground do you have to levitate to be called levitation? How far are you flying? The Wright brothers said if you're up 30 seconds, is that flying? So you see the context, all these things matter. In general, evidence is always better and more compelling than argument, right? Deanna Kuhn tested whether people recognize the difference between argument and evidence. She asked why criminals are released from prison, why they often return to crime. Well, they asked the audience and said only 16% of people generated any evidence. And much of that was pseudo-evidence. So we like to give arguments or yakking about that. In other experiment, people were less likely to BS if they had to write their reasons down. So I ask you for that, but write your reasons down and pass them in. In addition, they were even less likely to BS if they were told that they would be video recorded. We're going to video record you, telling you why you think these people should be left out of prison. Gee, kind of cuts down on the BS. In the third group, the responses were significantly less argumentative if they knew that an expert and a social scientist PhD who was studying this area would be evaluating their answers. So now you got somebody that's got some research in here. Cognitive styles of thinking, intuitive and reflexive. Most of us usually use intuitive thinking. So I want to take a minute here and do two quick things and see how good you are on math. I'm going to assume you've all had higher math. And just as soon as you know the answer, just squawk it out. Okay, first one, high math, but you guys will get it. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. Okay? The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? How much? We got 10 and 5. Most people will say 10. But if you say 10 cents, well, wait a minute. $1 more, that's going to end up to $1.20. So that's not. Now, the bat can only cost 5 cents. I mean, the ball 5 cents. So 5 cents and $1.05 equal $1.10, right? Okay, next question. This will be easy. How many animals of each kind did Moses take on the ark? You guys are good because Moses didn't take anybody on the ark. So the answer is 0. Okay, now, these are examples from the cognitive reflection test, CRT, designed to determine people's thinking styles. Gordon Pennycock found that people who scored high on this, reflective thinkers, were more able to accurately discern fake news from real news, even when the news headlines aligned with their own political ideologies. So these are two different thinking styles. So in the question, you say, well, let me sit there. I got to think about that. I'm going to write this down. You see what I'm saying? But what are we asked to do today? Quick answer, quick response. Time for this and so. You don't have time to go, oh, wait a minute. I got to process that a little bit. I'm going to think a little deeper about that instead of reflexive thinking. He also showed that many people believe fake news and not others BS, not because of motivational reasons, which I'll talk about, such as, oh, I just believe it because I wish the false thing to be true, but they tend to engage in what I call, and we're going to go over this a lot in the next class, lazy style of thinking, by putting very little thought into what they are seeing on social media. Intuitive and reflexive thinking styles are not related to IQ or intelligence. That helps explain why a lot of, quote, smart people, quote, who should know better, either utter or fall for BS. An example is all the sophisticated investors on Wall Street and experts who fell victim to Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Investors, they should know better. Why PhDs in one field of science can believe BS in another field. For example, a physicist who believes in creationism. You think, well, this guy's a really smart physicist. He's got scientific principle down. But he isn't going to apply it in this area. As I will show later, quite a bit in the next class, even physicians frequently fall victim to BS. Yours truly. Framing bias is a cognitive bias where our decisions are influenced by whether information is framed in a positive or negative light. Very common in marketing, which we'll talk about. People prefer bottled water that's described as 99% pure versus 1% impure, even though they're the same. Do you want to buy 85% fat-free or 15% fat hamburger or yogurt? Duh. The framing of a drug or a procedure is perceived very differently if framed on chances of survival or success versus death or failure. You need a new knee replacement, you need this. How I frame it makes a difference on how you're going to do. The statistics are the same, but how it's framed and presented to you is different. When it's easier to see potential gains, people tend to behave in a risk-adverse manner. When it's easier to see potential losses, people tend to behave in a risk-taking manner. Confirmation bias. My quote after that, the mother of all biases. Unfortunately, once we accept something to be true, we have very little hard time unlearning it if it turns out to be false. Rejecting an idea only comes after the idea is accepted and comprehended. Only after careful examination can an idea be rejected as false. Yet even when people do think more carefully and examine new information, they tend to do so in a very biased way. Rather than considering why something may be wrong, answering disconfirming questions, we have a much stronger tendency to think of reasons why it is correct. Confirming bias. Where do you get your news? Who are your favorite commentators? What newspapers, magazines, or books do you read? Does your political association make a difference on what you think or believe? Does your social group tend to believe much like you? What internet sources do you choose? Are you in an intellectual silo? Interfamily conflict. Sorry, Linda, but I had to bring this up. Anybody recognize this person? Rush Limbaugh. And he caused a little problem in our family because, as Linda recalls, in younger years, I think in the 80s or so, we'd be on trips, and the kids and I'd turn over to talk radio to listen to Rush. And my family would go ballistic. They go, you can't listen to that. You know, well, there was method in my madness. I want people to know what is being said in the other silo. What's going on? Just to dismiss this, that's not good thinking, critical thinking. So, Rush. Why talk about or listen to Rush? In 1990, Rush Limbaugh had more listeners than any other talk show host in America. And it was carried by over 650 stations. Get this, including the Armed Forces Network. So all of our soldiers all over the world are getting Rush on a daily basis. In November 2008, a poll by Zogby International found that Limbaugh was the most trusted news personality in the nation. Survey. Well, I want to listen to Rush. Because people believe he's the most trusted person there is, folks. So you better know what he's talking about or saying. He affected national elections, and following the Republican Revolution, in which the party regained control of Congress, In the 1994 midterm elections, after several decades of being out, the freshman Republican caucus awarded Limbaugh an honorary membership in their caucus, crediting him with having had a major role in their success. So I bought one of his books, Rush Limbaugh, The Way Things Ought to Be. I'm very conservative in money. I run a business, a little more liberal in socially, but I'm open to different ideas. And some of the few things Rush said early in his career, some of these conservative things, I go, well, he's got a point on some of these things. Now, it's interesting, I went to Goodreads to check what did people think about his book. And Goodreads, I went through almost 100 reviews. And how many stars they gave this book? And guess what? It's either the lowest, 1, or it's 5. There was no 2s or 3s, or 2.5s, or 1. It was either, this is the best book I've ever read. Everybody, this is the best thing. I'm giving it to my grandmother and all my kids. Or, this is just horrible. I had to quit after 2 pages, blah, 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 blah. So just that example back then of Goodreads, the polarization that has already occurred about the book. Of course, my family got me this for Christmas. Well, of course, got to be balanced. So, Franken, senator from up north, yeah. Well, he didn't call any punches here, what he's thinking. So it's up to me to decide, well, what's going on. Well, as you also know, he received from Melania Trump the Presidential Medal of Freedom as President Donald Trump delivered his State of the Union address. And he had President Trump on his radio show different times. I quit listening to him decades ago, but I know that he did. So how much of his rhetoric was rhetoric? How much was bullshit? Many, if not most of his comments, were intentionally bombastic and intended to arouse emotional response. That was his showman, what he wanted to do. His followers described himself as ditto heads, meaning, of course, that they agreed with him nearly 100% of the time. So people would call in and they go, ditto Rush, so 100%. I believe everything you say. Of course, we know these calls were screened. So if Paulson calls in and says, he had something that was kind of that, well, yeah, we're not putting you on there. We want ditto heads on here. Although he described himself as a conservative, I like some conservative ideas and principles. His views were blatantly racist, anti-feminist, anti-LGBT. He was a birther and thought climate change was a hoax. He said COVID was just a common cold, folks. He became addicted to pain meds that went into treatment. He believed that smoking, especially like cigars, was not harmful and stated it takes 50 years to kill people, even if it does. He says that Biden and the Democrats did not legitimately win the 2020 presidential election. That was as of January 21. He announced on his broadcast October 20th, 2020, that he had advanced lung cancer. He died February 19th, not too many months later, after he got the Presidential Medal, at the age of 70, clearly a victim of believing some of his own bullshit. If your time is short, PolitiFacts, for example, fact-checked Rush Limbaugh 42 times since 2009. 81% of his statements have been rated mostly false or pants on fire. Limbaugh's inaccuracy rating often were about President Obama or climate change. His last broadcast was just before he died in, obviously, in early 21, and this was the PolitiFact on that. False, 36%. Pants on fire, 26%. Mostly false, 21%. Half true, 10. Mostly true, 4. None true. So wait a minute. 96% of what he said was false or different degrees of it. Would you accept that score for your doctor? If that was my report card on how honest is Paulson or what he says, true, false, partly true, I hope you'd find another physician. How about if it's your accountant? Will you go to your accountant with that? Or your lawyer? Or your minister? Or do you want a report card of that on your spouse? Or your children? So what blows my mind is why this is acceptable. Emotional factors in BS. Besides all the cognitive biases, and we're winding down here, they make BS more likely. How we feel and will feel if we believe or challenge the BS are very powerful influencers. Fatigue, cognitive load, too much stuff up there, divided attention, sleep deprivation all make BS more believable. Mood studies show that the mood people are in, happy, neutral, or sad, influence their judgments. They showed people nice, happy comedies, and they showed this other group nature, and these other ones showed them movies of people dying of cancer. And then they had them go through cognitive exercises and to see how good they were in picking stuff out. Happy people are more likely to be duped. Sad people were more skeptical. A person's mood selectivity influences what memories they recall. In addition, our mood influences how we process information. Most people in a bad mood process information in a more systemic and deception detecting way. So I'm not suggesting that you all do that. Need to fit in and be liked. I like this slide. 2 movies are showing folks which one are you doing. So in my opinion, this is one of the strongest factors why people fall for BS. Refer to the bucket class. Well, we can't all get along. We all, or at least most of us, need to belong and feel adapted or accepted by others. There's a nice study that I'll show you quickly by Salmon and Ash. Participants were shown a line, Exhibit A, and asked which option, A, B, or C, in Exhibit 2 it most closely resembled. However, they carefully planted 5 research assistants in the group who were instructed to intentionally give the wrong answer out loud. So, here's Exhibit 1. See the length of that line? Then they put up Exhibit 2 and they say, okay, folks, which one matches? And 76% of the participants agreed with the peer's answer, the wrong answers, even though they were wrong, that they were shouting out. Most participants conformed on 1 to 3 of the 12 trials, which the group gave the wrong answers. But a significant number, every time, they just said what the other person. People may hold very different views from the crowd in private, while at the same time publicly conform to the senseless displayed by the crowd in order to fit in. Honest is in turn defined as free of deceit, truth, and sincere. I love this commercial on TV. Anybody ever seen this? Guy with bad COPD, and he says, the worst lies of all are the ones we tell ourselves. Smoking is okay. They are the most damaging. We are the stories we tell ourselves. Every lie is 2 lies. The lie we tell others and the lie we tell ourselves to justify it. And Shakespeare and Hamlet had it right. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not be false to any man. So, homework. You didn't know there was going to be homework in this class, did you? So we have a week off before we So again, we're going to talk about how to avoid stepping in it, but how to deal with people who have stepped in it, which is going to be fun. I'm going to give you a playlist for that. So homework, try to identify BS in different areas and in different media. Listen to different political silos. How does that make you feel emotionally when you hear that? See what you watch on social media if you do, how accurately you think it is. Instead of listening to a topic discussed on MSNBC, and then Fox, and then the PBS NewsHour. Do you feel it's factual or does it contain propaganda or BS? Try scanning for BS in your friends, in your spouse, in your children. Especially tuned to any commercials that you want to try, to get you to buy something. Ask your doctor about. I love those TV commercials. Ask your doctor about that. Yeah, right. Monitor yourself and see when any BS escapes from your mouth. I have to go a little harder to do our monitor and share the exercises with others. So thank you for staying, and we'll resume in a couple weeks and see if we can deal with this topic a little more.
Yes.
Sound like fun?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Paulson, for explaining why BS can be dangerous and how to identify it. Part 2 of Dr. Paulson's course, entitled BS and How to Avoid Stepping in It, will take place the week after next, October 25th. Next week, we will look forward to a program presented by Grinnell College Assistant Professor of Computer Science, Dr. Nicole Eichmeyer, entitled Network Science, Making Sense of Complex Interactions. See you next week. Thank you for staying.